This YouTube channel has been created, directed, and presented by Reverend Dr. Dickie Joe Mullen. This video focuses on horoscopes of widowhood, or the astrology and loss of a spouse, where Dr. Mullen discusses the arrangements of planets as it is associated with the death of a spouse.
When a loved one becomes a memory, that memory becomes a treasure. Perhaps they are not stars, but openings in heaven through which our loved ones look and let us know that they are all right. Those are some popular sayings about bereavement. And, of course, death is just a part of life, as Forrest Gump said. And in astrology, there is a special type of horoscope called the Astrology of Widowhood or Widowerhood. When we lose a loved one who's been an important part of our lives, a different cycle of life begins. It's kind of like a rebirth and a renewal. And there is a way to note down the time of the loved one's passing and actually prepare an event chart for that. Coping with the loss of a spouse is an important life passage. Memories and shadows shade into thoughts of an uncertain future. Usually there's a grieving process to deal with, followed by efforts to mingle and begin afresh, although some individuals never recover from the loss of a loved one. I personally feel that's wrong. It's honoring our loved ones to go on and live our lives as well as we can. A sense of freedom and awareness of various possibilities can be followed by a vague emptiness, though. That's all those feelings are common among the newly widowed. Perhaps there was a time of being a caregiver and seeing the spouse in a great deal of pain, and in a way there's kind of a peace or relief that comes if death comes as a blessing in that case. Perhaps the death occurred suddenly, unexpectedly. There wasn't a chance to say goodbye, and there's a sense of it not really being real. None of those are easy experiences, but preparing a horoscope for the moment when they occur can provide tremendous insight as to what to expect and what the new beginning would be. This idea of starting a new cycle, coping with the loss of a spouse, began when I was working with a fellow astrologer here in Orlando, a lady who was president of the Astrology Guild locally for many years. Her name was Gloria Penrod. She lost her beloved husband after almost 40 years of marriage. And we prepared a horoscope for the moment of his passing, and then realized how much that was descriptive of exactly what was going on. Following that, we prepared horoscopes for friends who'd been widowed, men and women both, and they were able to be very useful tools in understanding the next stage of life. A good way to begin with the astrology of death and widowhood is to think about just the basic sun sign of the time when the death occurs. If a death occurs, if a loved one is lost during the sign of Aries and the new life begins, a change can be rather quick and unexpected. Exploring new interests is a very good idea. Anger can frequently be a part of the grieving process. And snapping at others, keeping a perspective. If you find yourself getting angry at perfect strangers, angry at the person at the gas station, it may well be that the loss occurred under the sign of Aries. If the death occurs in the sign of Taurus, and the new life begins in late April to mid-May, gardening, houseplants can be an important part of the grieving process. Music can be a source of solace and joy. Taurus relates especially to the ears and sounds and music. Also, healing jewelry or crystals, and holding certain crystals or stones can be very helpful. An especially good one is black onyx. that will ground sorrow and anguish. If the death occurs in the sign of Gemini, there's a need to struggle against boredom, a need to journal, talk things over. A writer's club or journaling could be very helpful here. If the sign occurs of Cancer, the birth sign of Cancer, is prominent in the death chart, or the death occurs at the end of June through mid-July, family members can be an important part of the solace and the grieving process. Also, there can be a lot of focus on the water. The human body is chemically almost like the ocean, and the ocean and other bodies of water too have a way of healing and balancing us. Popular vacation places often involve whitewater rafting, and involved with the grieving process. If the death occurs in the summer months, say June 21st to July 23rd, waterfront activities can be very helpful. So can visiting museums and historical sites. If the death occurs in the sign of Leo, creating a warm and luxurious sort of surrounding for the self, a beautiful place. Also creating a monument and glorifying the spouse that's passed away. An endowment fund, something that would be, say, to help the next generations, maybe establishing a scholarship or a one-time gift to help the departed to be remembered while helping the next future would be good. If the spouse departs under the sign of Virgo, learning first aid about health, getting everything very clean and well organized. There's a tradition that the house should always be cleaned if a death occurs anyway, but particularly under the sign of Virgo, cleanliness and decluttering, honoring the loved ones by making the best use of their belongings. Small animals relate to the sign of Virgo, so adopting a kitten or a bird or other small pet, a puppy, could be very helpful. The Libra-related time period for losing a spouse, support groups for widows and widowers could be particularly good. And it's also a time when conversation can be therapeutic. Dealing with the legalities of the death can be a strong focus here. Interesting craft projects, creativity can be a good sort of an outlet. If the death occurs under the sign of Scorpio, exploring the topic of reincarnation, how this spouse that's passed away might be a part of your past lives, can be significant. Also, mediumship and spirituality, evidence of life after death, is comforting no matter when the death might occur, but particularly at the time of Scorpio. Messages from the other side, omens and signs that one isn't alone can be plentiful. If there is a Sagittarius link to the time of widowhood, there can be a strong interest in foreign travel and learning new academic subjects. Also, learning to play something competitive, whether it might be bridge or something more athletic, stimulating the idea of developing the competitive self can be helpful. Under the sign of Capricorn, security issues, getting finances in order, possibly a scrapbook. Memories can be a big part of the healing process. Going over the family tree, putting everybody's place in it, dignity and respect. Beginning the new phase of life can be particularly important. Capricorn is an earth sign, and so an evergreen tree planted in memory of the loved one, and also time spent appreciating nature, parks, places of natural beauty, especially those that have been well established, can be particularly important. I had one couple that had been married many years. The lady died suddenly, and the gentleman, this was during the time of Capricorn, went out to Yellowstone National Park. on the summer after the passing and spent a lot of time visiting the traditional places related to Yellowstone, the buildings, and found that a very comforting place to leave the ashes, to scatter the ashes in the sun of his late wife. That was very healing. If the death occurs under the sign of Aquarius, the element of surprise can be especially important. There's a saying that death has no manners. It occurs when it will. But if there's an Aquarius sun sign or other prominent element in the death chart, it can really be very, very unexpected or odd. One death that occurred here in Florida, we're the lightning capital of the world, and you wouldn't expect someone to be struck by lightning at the beginning of February at the beach, but this did occur at one time, and that's a typical example. Studying metaphysical subjects such as yoga, and then also volunteer work, because Aquarius relates to humanitarian concerns, can be a way to cope with the idea of the loss occurring at the sign of Aquarius. Also, computer technology can be particularly interesting to focus on and helpful at that time. Spiritual strength is an important part of a Pisces passing of widowhood, and this can also be a time when meditation, working with a seance, or visiting a medium can offer particular comfort. Focusing on a deeper understanding of faith, dreams can be very meaningful. We have to have this happen. It's hard to describe verbally, but a visitation from a loved one often occurs. And we'll know that they're really there, that it isn't just a dream, merely a dream, but the visitation from a loved one seems to be very, very common if the loss occurs under the sign of Pisces. Beginning a dream journal, and also falling asleep at night, thinking about future options and guidance. The dream time can be very helpful. With the loss of a loved one, remembering that to honor the loved one by bringing out the brightest and best within ourselves is the point behind establishing this type of astrology reading. This is Dickie Jo Mullen with prayers and blessings for our loved ones on the other side of the veil. Remember, death is not the end.